Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Dell Technologies DraftKings live chat. We're going to update you on everything, and this will be the final PGA chat of the season. It's going to start turning into potentially an early Sunday morning NFL chat. Maybe we'll do one midweek too if you got some questions about that. We'll see. I'll have the full schedule released next week. But for next week, Monday is going to be week 1 rankings with Jake Seeley. Tuesday, Feinberg's going to be back. We're going to break down the BMW because where this is a Monday finish, odds and everything won't be out until Tuesday, so we'll do that Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday morning, or potentially midnight on Tuesday, expect week 1 spread picks with me, Feinberg, and the Cust. Drew Dinkmeyer and Michael Leone will be back to break down the Week 1 DraftKings slate, and we'll all be good. So you can check into that as we go along. Plus, I'll announce the winners of the 2 Dell Technologies giveaway from the 2 previous shows. So go back and check those out to get in those contests next Tuesday on the BMW show. I do want to remind everyone to give the episode a like. It's why we've been able to keep these free all season long, and plus we'll keep putting that forward as we go, and people really have seemed to like these chats, so we'll bring them back for next year. And become a member at Fantasy National right now. There's only 3 tournaments left in this playoff season. We got the whole swing season. We got the entire next season. Great hit last week with Bryson DeChambeau. A lot of green screens out there. And it's just time to become a member. If you haven't done it yet, you've already missed out on a year. You might as well get in for next year and get those screens going. I do want to give a shout out to Kenny Kim's podcasting partner, Brad Messersmith. He's stepping away from the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast. Brad is an awesome guy. He did a great job on that pod, and we wish him farewell, and we wish him good luck in whatever he's doing next, and we're going to miss him on. Toe Tag and Tambo has taken his spot on that pod, and I look forward to listening to him, but it's one of the OGs of the fantasy golf podcasting world, so it's going to be a bummer to see Brad go. Best of luck, Brad. Thanks for everything. And now let's bring in Reid Fowler from DK Live. Dude, what's going on with the weather? That's the first thing we need to talk about because I didn't really see anything for Friday, Saturday. You seen anything different?
No, nothing much. I mean, it's extremely hot right now over here, the humidity. So thank God we have that extra day for that weather to go out. Friday, Saturday looks pretty good. There might be some moisture, very, very little bit. Come Thursday night, nothing to make note of. So it's just really hot.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's going to be good for some players, poor for other players. But this course tends to dry out at this time of the year over the Labor Day weekend. In even just using Fantasy National, looking back at course conditions, the greens either always play as fast or lightning fast. So they're well above average in terms of green speed. Did you factor that into your mixed condition model at all this week?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you look at some of these guys too, who maybe haven't been putting well due to the surfaces, whether it be, slower greens that we saw, about a month ago on POA, some of these guys with these faster greens, like Tiger, for instance, always prefers faster greens. So if you want to lean that way, absolutely. Make the mixed condition model. That's where you want to put it. From a holistic point, you want to see putting because I think that's important. But when you're looking a little bit deeper into it, this course has played lightning fast on the green. So maybe some of these guys that have had bad putting splits, maybe they can get some of that back this week.
All right, so just looking at Fantasy National right now, when I set those filters to pass 50 rounds, fast or lightning greens, here's who comes out tops in terms of strokes gained putting. Kuchar, Webb, Brooks, Xander, Noren, Louis, Hostler, Snedeker, Putnam, Shez, Cook, Kim, Kevin Na, Patrick Reed, Jason Day, Kisner, and Brian Harman. So there are some guys there that are just not playing all that well that if you did want to weight that a little bit, that's something to look into for mining some potential sleepers. But overall, those are a list of pretty good putters to begin with.
I mean, some guys that you do like, even if you're not taking the narrative of the bombers, right? The long hitters, you want some of these short hitters who are pretty good with their, with their putting. Kuchar was this guy, maybe last year. We haven't seen it at all this week. But there are some guys down there. Webb Simpson comes to mind. Some of these other guys who have been putting better this week. Hostler is always a guy who can get it done on the green. So if you want to take some hits down in that 7K range, that low or that high 6K range, there are some guys, you want one of these statistics, right? These birdies or better gain, putting, whatever it may be, you want one of these to pop in that lower salary range to potentially get you your 6 of 6. You're going to need 6 of 6 this week because of the size of the field, because of the cut. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the guys who can putt, potentially down there and score birdies or better.
Yeah, it's not even going to be enough just to have 6 of 6. You're going to have, unless like
Right.
the ultimate chalk, and that's even really hard to determine at this point who's going to be the highest owned because it's so spread out at this point. It's a lot like last week, to be perfectly honest with you. Maybe we'll see some separation the closer we get to Friday. But you're going to need 6 guys that basically finish inside the top. You're going to need the winner, probably second, 2 other guys in the top 10, and then 2 other guys inside the top 25. Logically, that's what it's going to take to win one of these giant tournaments. And there are going to be 6 of 6 teams that just don't cash this week because, I mean, top 70 and ties make the cut in a field of 98, and there's no MDF, so potentially you could get up to like 82 guys making the cut. So you almost have to treat this like a WGC in a lot of ways.
Right, exactly. And that's why you can take the stars and scrubs. Not necessarily like a major, because we have some guys that you're like, how the hell did they get in the top 100? So there's some guys in that lower 6K range that I'm not even coming close to playing. But yeah, absolutely, you're right. I mean, this tournament, you got to treat it like a WGC. You got to treat it like somewhat like a major. And what we've seen in the past, the elite, they come and they show up at this course, right? You do have some guys that haven't necessarily, don't call themselves elite, but Rory's won this twice, Ricky. So you have these guys who are the cream of the crop, and that's what I'm looking for. Potentially trying to find that in the 7K range for this tournament.
My cheat sheet for DraftKings is up right now on DKPlaybook.com. You can find that also up on my Facebook page, where you can find the links to almost everything. So I recommend everyone go check that out. My betting cheat sheet will be up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme tomorrow afternoon. I want some more information. I mean, no need to finalize some picks, 30 hours out. Give it like 12 hours out, and then I can finally really narrow it down. I still haven't really decided on my first round leader plays yet, but there are some top 20s I like, some outrights I like. I'm not playing a lot at the top, but I do like Justin Rose at 25-1. It doesn't look like that number is going to move. It's not that I love Rose especially, but I just think that number's too big for a quality player like Justin Rose. We so rarely see him drop below the 20s. And just as it would be, like when we've seen this so far this season, like when Day came in at 20 at Farmers, that's when he won. When he came in at like 22 at Quail Hollow, that's when he won. When Thomas came in at 30, that's when he won at Bridgestone. Like when you see these elite players drop down, it even happened to Rory at API. He got down to 20-1, boom, he spikes. There's so much talent in this field, yes, but if you can get one of these elite players at a really good price, I'm always keen to jump on that. Whether it works or not, we'll see, but I think that there's nice value in that 25-1 line. I don't think that the injury narrative is quite what people are making it out to be. The guy just couldn't putt last week. That is why he missed the cut. Load up your questions. Let's get to them. Starting off right now with Matt Jones. I feel like Matt is always the first guy in the chat when it comes to this every week. He's getting those questions prepped. Poor, because he's going to ask a question. I'm going to give him an answer. I'm probably going to be wrong. So going back to John Rahm in the $12 Albatross single entry tournament this week. Too contrarian, or does it make sense? I mean, obviously you can go wrong with John Rahm. As we saw last week, he was just atrocious across the board. Whether it was putting, he lost over 5 strokes. He lost over 3 strokes on approaches. The ball striking just wasn't there. And even last year at this event, he actually lost strokes on approach and gained like 8 putting, and that's why he finished inside the top 5. So I'm not really super keen on John Rahm, but I don't think when you have a quality of player like him, especially at low ownership, which is finally going to be the case for him, that you're not really outsmarting yourselves. There's guys that I like better, but if you can sell yourself on John Rahm, I don't think that taking him in a single entry is too contrarian. I mean, if the guy pops and he's 4% owned, you're going to win.
Yeah, and if you feel like Hideki and Cantlay and some of these other guys in his price range are going to garner ownership because of recent form, I think John Rahm's a fine play. He's one of the guys that I really like this week. You're not going on current form with John Rahm. You're going over long form. He is one of the elites. We've seen that in the past. And when he can get his irons right, when he can putt, look, he lost essentially strokes in every category last week. And we've seen what he can do. Out of the last, 6 tournaments or 5 tournaments, he's got 3 missed cuts. But the other ones that he's made, he's got a 4th and a 17th. The 17th at WGC is when he lost a ton of strokes putting. So we know the guy tee to green. And what we've talked about over this entire season is you want these elite ball strikers that can maybe flip that putting. So we talked about it at the top of the show. Maybe the faster surfaces and being back on bent is going to be beneficial for Rahm. I do really like him in a single entry. It's not a bad call.
Brian asked, do you have any input on Jimmy Walker? Wide fairways, I feel like he can actually score here. Recent form is terrifying. We'll get to that in a second. But both of his top 10s here, he came in with missed cuts. That's good to know. I actually didn't realize that. Would you rather just be safe with Sink, Grillo, or Stanley? I actually like Sink and Stanley a lot more. I'm using those two guys. I'm not using Grillo, and I'm not using Jimmy Walker. But just looking back at it, he hasn't finished better than T29 at any point over the past 2 months, which is kind of terrifying. He's lost strokes tee to green in 5 of those 6 events, and he saved himself the PGA and the RBC Canadian Open by gaining over 4 strokes putting. Like, it'd be nice if the ball striking was there, but he's losing strokes off the tee, which is pretty common. But when he was riding that hot form, he was gaining like 5 strokes on approach, 6 strokes on approach. The last 2 weeks, it combined 1.8. It's not going to cut it. And if the approach is off, his around the green game has just been brutal. So I get you might want to go with the course form. And if he's going to be your sleeper and you use him in 5% of your lineups, 10% of your lineups because you're committed, I get it. Not for me, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that last point that you made, it really matters on what type of game you're playing. You're playing cash? Absolutely not, right? There's no way you're playing Jimmy Walker even close to cash. GPPs, I don't think it's a bad play, right? You're banking on the fact that, again, the putting can get back. It can get back to where it was a few tournaments ago where he was gaining almost 4 strokes average putting. But what scares you, obviously, is a guy can't hit the ball off the tee. Now, this course, right, have the easiest to hit, close to the easiest to hit fairways. The rough is thick, but not necessarily that penal. So if you're taking Jimmy and you're fading the Grillos, you're fading the Sinks, those guys in that range, I think you could potentially make 2 of 20 lineups with Jimmy Walker based off of that course form. Again, longer form, right? Same thing with Rahm. You want Jimmy Walker as a potential major winner in these tougher fields, potentially get some back. His season right now is absolutely atrocious. And so, take it with a grain of salt, but I don't mind the 2 of 20 lineups. I'm going to have some Jimmy Walker in my lineups.
Robert asks, Pat, what are your thoughts on Danny Lee this week? He has averaged 90 DK points the last 4 tournaments. I think it's almost like the Joel Dahman situation where you have to look at what tournaments those were. One of those was the Barbasol, one of those was the Wyndham, one of those was the RBC Canadian Open. 3 super high scoring courses. And then last week at the Northern Trust, he only had 73.5. Still made the cut. That was nice. He shot 267s, played 2 rounds in the 70s as well. He's someone that can get so hot, and again, he's someone that's going to be wildly unowned. But even when I start looking at that area, the $6,800 area, I think I'd rather ride the form of Bronson Burgoon or potentially even CT Pan. I much prefer JB Holmes and Jason Kokrak, who I'm using a lot of this week from down. I mean, not a lot of, because I'm not really dipping too much into this range. It's very risky. And again, it's one of these things I don't want to talk you out of any $6,000 player because, frankly, they're all kind of the same. They all have inherently high risk. If you can get Danny Lee through the cut, I will say, a lot like Tony Finau, not so much Finau now, but Finau from like a year ago in these events, that if he does make the cut, he is going to outscore whatever his finishing point is. But even then, will he score enough to get you like that top 20 you may need to be on a winning lineup? Looking back at his last few results, 34th at the Northern Trust, 24th at the Wyndham. He was 6th at the RBC Canadian Open, and then he was 21st at Barbasol in a super weak field. That I just don't think it's going to cut it for me.
Yeah, and if you think Burgoon or Chris Kirk, for instance, are going to be chalked down in this range, Danny Lee's not too bad, right? He's top 30 in birdies or better gain over the last 24. And what you're seeing with Danny Lee too is that, like you're mentioning, like you have to potentially get him on the days or the tournaments that he's going to hit, and that could be finding a needle in a haystack. His approach game hasn't been that good over the past 6 tournaments or so, so that kind of scares me a little bit. I think this is an approach type. I mean, every tournament you want your strokes gain approach to be well, but over here I think you need to, especially with the longer irons. Danny Lee is someone that I want to be fading, like you were mentioning, Kokrak, even CH3 in terms of cut equity down here. He might not give you potentially a top 25 or a top 20, but for me, cut equity.
Yeah, but we don't need any cut equity this week. Like 90% of people make the cut.
Right, exactly. So for me, like Danny Lee or Charles Howell, I'd rather take Charles Howell.
See, I would rather take Danny Lee in that case and just gamble on the upside because you really think Charles Howell's going to come inside like the top 20? Probably not.
Yeah, but it'd be splitting hairs, right? I mean, Charles Howell or Danny Lee are going to be in 2 of 20 lineups potentially. So, for me, I'd rather go on the safe route with Charles Howell. But I get Danny Lee because when he pops, like you're mentioning, he can give you that upside on that top 10, top 15.
Kyle and actually Greg asked about this too. Thoughts on Bubba and Leishman this week? If you had to pick one, which one would you choose? I would choose Mark Leishman. Just historically, not a Bubba track. Doesn't mean he can't play well, but when you play the odds with Bubba, don't target him at places where he rarely plays well.
Yeah, exactly. Bubba is probably the one guy on sort of the tour that course form or course history is his narrative. So I would go Leishman in that sense.
Next one from Billy. What's up, Pat? What up, Billy? Your thoughts on Aaron Wise this week? Feel like no one's talking about him, and his game appears to be coming around. He did play a final round with DJ, and I can kind of see that happening again. Well, I guess that would be good news because a lot of people project Dustin to have a very good week here. I guess I'm not really in or out on Wise. He's falling in that dead range where the only guy I'm really using is Tyrrell Hatton. Just because of the way that I've constructed my teams. I've really tightened my core at the top this week, and I'm using a lot of Justin Thomas, a lot of Rory, a lot of Tiger, and a lot of Justin Rose, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of like upper $7,000 guys for me. So I had really dipped down to that like $72,000 to $7,000 range, and I just wasn't really feeling it this week. I don't think that he's going to be like as low owned as you might expect because people are going to see two top tens in his past three starts. They just saw him on TV make a Sunday run and then he went like bogey, bogey, bogey and took himself out of it. It makes sense. He can hit driver here, and anytime that Aaron Wise can hit driver, that's always a positive in his favor. Not for me though.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, if you're looking at that top 7K range, Gary Woodland, Brandt Snedeker, are some guys that I'm looking at that Brandt Snedeker especially is probably going to get low ownership. But Aaron Wise, 6 of the last 8 tournaments with the miscut. Like you were mentioning, I think a lot of that is recent form of where he's coming from. But you're right, this area, this salary is kind of a dead zone, right? I mean, the low 7K or the on the dot 7K guys are much more appealing. So I'm going to be fading Aaron Wise. I'd rather go a little bit up to those guys like Snedeker or Woodland.
Yeah, I'm not using Snedeker or Woodland. Like I said, I'm just mainly staying away from that entire range, just based on the way that my construction worked this week. Brian says, if you don't give the video a like, none of your lineups will cash. I mean, I can't guarantee that, but it's almost like the Ander curse working against you. You don't give it a like, bad juju for you. Kyle says, DJ going to be low owned. He's probably going to be the lowest owned of the top 3 guys, but I still project him at like 15%.
Yeah, I mean, Dustin Johnson, I mean, like without those triples that he got earlier in the tournament last week, I mean, he would have been right in it. So I don't think we have him around 15, like you were saying, 16%. Rory is interesting. Other guys in that range, potentially, who might garner. Spieth, obviously, no one likes Spieth. But yeah, the top 3 guys, I think DJ would be the lowest owned.
Steve and Paul, how do I avoid falling into another sinkhole? You can just take Stewart Sink this week and you should be fine. Is this a good week to max out my city card and play JT in 100% of my lineups? I wouldn't recommend anyone maxing out their credit cards to enter DK lineups. Probably not the best strategy. For one, I can tell you right now, I'm going to click on my lineups page because I have it set on there. JT is my most overweight guy of the week, which now I look forward to him missing the cut because this always happens to me. But with Justin Thomas, I am playing him in 60% of my lineups this week. I put like a hard cap on the bottom, like 30 is like basically the lowest owned I'm using of anyone that's not in the 6K area, and 60 is the highest owned. I believe he's one of 2 guys that I have at over 50%. So if you like JT as much as I do, 100% is not the craziest idea here. If you think that he's going to win, you're going to need the winner to, I wouldn't say cash, but to have a very high cash, and I think that JT has the best chance to win.
Right, especially in these fields, right? We say that WGCs, majors, this has that air about it where you're going to need these guys to win, right? In the top, for me, instead of JT, it's going to be Rory as my most owned guy. Same thing, right? I expect that the sweat is going to be real with Rory. We've seen it in the past, but looking at his course form, looking at the stats that I think that are going to pan out well here, Rory is the guy that I want. But yeah, I mean, if you want to save a couple $100, JT is a fine play. I think, when you're looking at course form and what he did last year, obviously he won. So he knows how to get the ball around this course. And that's not a bad play at all.
Nathan, how much traction is Bronson Burgoon likely going to get this weekend? Sub 10% ownership? I think so. It depends on, even people on FantasyNational.com right now, we have them projected at 6.7%. And I would have a feeling that people that are really in tune with DraftKings Golf and the PGA every single week, the grinders on DraftKings, people using metrics in order to make their picks, not just saying, I know that guy, I'll pick him. they're going to be using Bronson Burgoon. So that number might even be high. Frankly, there's no one really below $6,000 that I see being like uber chalky. Maybe I'm wrong on this, and maybe it's just Joel Dahman because he's the min price, and maybe he hits double digits. But I would say anywhere from like 4 to 7% for Burgoon. I don't think that you run the risk of him being like uber chalky.
Yeah, I think Chris Kirk might have had that last week, right? He's a guy that we see down here. Russell Henley is a guy that we've seen in the high 6K range for quite some time, and he's not playing well. So those guys might get, more ownership than we think, but it's not going to be over 10%. I think, like you're mentioning, Chris Kirk, Burgoon being right by Chris Kirk, I think does help him, with the ownership because Chris Kirk is always.
I think it helps Chris Kirk too. Like I kind of like Chris Kirk this week, but he's not going to come in at the chalk price that we saw last week because he burned everyone last week.
Exactly. So I think it's a fine play because you get that ownership, you get that ownership relief for both of those guys.
Are you rolling with Stenson? This is from Sean T. I'm leaning towards fading because of the risk involved. This is one of the reasons why I'm using Stenson. That out of all these $8,000 guys, especially being by like Cantlay, Reed, and Hideki, that he is going just to come in around like 8-9%. And this is, of course, where he's won. He fits this to a T when you look at the skill set that is required to play really well at TPC Boston. I really like Stenson. I agree that there's risk involved. It's a cash game, no thanks. But I don't play cash. I play GPPs, so I'm using Stenson.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Strokes gained par 5. He's top 10. His putting obviously is something that he needs to fix. But at the same time, you're right. I mean, people are going to be fading him because of the injury, because of him being on a quote-unquote bye week. Stenson's a fine play, especially where he's priced and the guys around him. So I really like that play. I'm going to be playing Stenson as well.
Connor says, does this course suit Jon Rahm? I would say on paper, not as much as some other courses. Jon Rahm, surprisingly, is not, for a guy that bombs it so far, he's not great with his long irons. It's one part where he's actually struggled over the past 18 months or so. Not to say that he can't turn it around, but you're going to see a lot of shots come in from beyond 175 yards this week. Now, it does suit him that he's going to have no issues giving himself eagle opportunities on the par 5s and even driving one of the par 4s. That's always a benefit of the bombers here, but his game is very inconsistent, and if the putter doesn't come along with him this week, I don't think that he contends. Obviously, that could happen, as we saw at this course last year, where he just crushed the par 5s and made a bunch of putts. If that doesn't happen, I just don't see him competing, so I'm fading.
Yeah, and like you were saying, well, I think what goes into that is his strokes gain approach, right? His irons are the things that are failing him right now. If we're leaning on the fact that he can bomb it out there and flip some wedges in and score on those par 5s, with that winning score probably being around 14 or 15, potentially even higher, that's what we're going to need for Rahm. And things have to fall to a certain spot with Rahm. Now, if you want to take that risk and then also be able to use that ownership leverage, and Rahm's a fine play, but right there's that risk, like you were saying. If he's not making his putts, it kind of has that Jason Day-esque thing where if he's not making those putts this season right now, then he's not going to place. So there is some risk, but again, I like Rahm.
Clark asks, the best plays under $7,000. I don't think that there's any best play. There's not one guy that sticks out. It was I think it was at the Wyndham. I really like Mackenzie Hughes. I played him in 80% of my lineups just because I thought that he was so much better in coming into form against everyone else down there. It's not like he had a great week, but he made the cut, came T30 or something like that. It was worth the price because it was a big field. This week you need to spike for upside. So I'm going with Chris Kirk, JB Holmes, and Jason Kokrak. Those are 3 of the 4 guys that I'm playing below $7,000. And the only other one I used him in 10% of lineups was Patton Kizzire. It's nothing sexy. He hasn't been good by any means, but the approach game has been shockingly on, despite the fact that the off-the-tee game has been so putrid. But he's really good from that 175 to 200 range. He has won twice this year. He's the bottom of the barrel price. I'm not recommending people load up on Patton Kizzire, but that's just a chance that I'm taking this week because he's going to be 1% owned. Yeah,
I'm playing the same guys that you're mentioning. I think Brendan Steele, again, I still have 30 hours to ruin my lineups of Brendan Steele. He's another guy, right, that we've seen pop. That name down there there is some allure to it. But again, he's been playing pretty bad. So again, that's why he's at this price. But in terms of driving distance, in terms of what he can do in terms of scoring birdies, I do like Steele long form outside of the other guys that you just mentioned.
Gary Woodland, anybody? Let's see how he says. I'm playing Vegas odds, not fantasy. Great. Now this guy's just responding to questions and screwing up the chat. I'm not answering your stupid Gary Woodland question. Just know that we haven't projected to be the highest owned player in the $7,000 range at like 16%. So people are on Gary Woodland. No one is talking about CT Pan, a sleeper. I think that he may have peaked at the Wyndham. I'm not going to lie to you. We talk about this a lot, that when you see guys get their breakthrough win, we saw it with Aaron Wise. I think Raza brought this up on the DraftKings show from yesterday, that when guys like Justin Thomas win, or Spieth win, or Dustin win, that can build momentum and get people going forward. When you see the Michael Kims or the Aaron Wises or the CT Pans finally break through and get that first big win, that there's a bit of a recoup period. Your life changes in such a dramatic fashion. You're safe. You can be on tour for the next 3 years. You get $1 million payday that I think it takes some people a little while to adjust. Now, Pan played okay last week. I just think this is more of a big boys tournament. He's not at that level yet.
Yeah, I agree. And you like CT Pan, like you were mentioning, the Wyndham, the RBC Heritage, some of these shorter courses where he can really dial in with his irons and go against the field. So I'm not playing any CT Pan. If you want to take that constraint, look, Zach Johnson mentioned too, like he's 11 of these 18 holes in previous where he came in with 8 iron or less. So if you want to take that narrative of shorter hitters and guys who are playing well, CT Pan does fit that mold. But like you're mentioning, the bigger guys, the elite guys, they are the ones that rise to the top here. So I'm going to be fading CT Pan.
Matt asks, hey, Pat, congrats on your Bryson hit. Well, thank you. I hope you were able to cash in on that, too. How does Griot look in your stats model this week? He actually looks quite good, which always terrifies me. But I feel like Griot almost like there's certain people, you know how like I love Luke Listreed? I think this is well known. Yeah. Griot is sort of the anti-Luke List, but they're kind of the same guy, because they always just look really great in stats models, and then you use them and you're like, what did I do? Like, this is just terrible. So something is off with the way that he ends up playing. If we look at it over the past 24 rounds, he actually is quite bad. He's 81st in my model this week. Over the past 50 rounds, he's actually 25th in this field. I'm just very bad at getting Emiliano Griot right. And even when you look at him recently, he's been bleeding a ton of strokes around the green, which I don't think is the biggest deal here if you can hit a lot of greens in regulation. The problem is he's not doing that. He's going to hit some fairways, sure, but the approach game hasn't been there. He's consistently better from some of these longer irons, which he will get to play this week, but I'm just not seeing the form there for him to pop to me to really put too much investment behind him. In fact, I'm putting zero investment behind him.
Right, exactly. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, is that when you look at his iron play, that's what Griot is. That's sort of his calling card. And when he's not hitting those irons well, it's going to be tough for him to recoup. A longer course, so you don't think Griot's a longer hitter. But if you look at long form, right, if you're using Fantasy National, you see his stats pop, because there was a time where Griot was a guy down in this range that all of us played, and he was chalk when you're at, when he was in the low 7K range. I think some recency bias of seeing him down here and him potentially having those statistics like the approach game come through does sort of give us rose-colored lenses on Griot. I'm not going to be playing him as well, but I can see why people will look at him and say, yeah, if he just gets his irons right, he could be a fine play, but I'm not going to be playing him.
I think that if you look at the typical player that you do want to target here, I think skill-wise and just the type of game that they play, Griot matches up surprisingly with Charlie Hoffman a lot. Someone who's won here and had success at this course is going to be relatively popular. So I think if you're just going on pure skills, then I think that Griot is a fit. I just don't like the way that he's playing. I would rather pivot and go to like Kyle Stanley, who's a very similar player also. I just prefer him more instead this week.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Next question, Fleetwood, DeChambeau, or Henrik Stenson? I'm using DeChambeau, but I worry because he's like an awful putter on bent grass. POA in Bermuda, he's quite good. On bent, like he's really bad. So that could be worrisome, but I'm going to ride some form. And weirdly, his ownership's not projected to be very highly coming off this win. This is a guy who has 3 wins over the past 18 months. He has the 3rd most wins on tour over that time, other than Dustin Johnson and Justin Thomas. So the guy has huge win equity. He's still priced in the $8,000 area. That's good enough for me to get back on. I'm just not super, super highly owned. I'm using more Stenson than anyone. I'm not actually using Fleetwood this week. I don't think he's a bad play, just couldn't use everyone kind of thing. With Stenson, I've made a decision to go super in on him, along pairing him with Justin Thomas and Justin Rose in 2 different types of situations, only because I like the skill set. I know that he's not going to be highly owned, and I'm willing to roll the dice in this spot. I think safety-wise, Tommy might be your best bet, but for me, it's Stenson out of those 3.
Yeah, I agree. I think DeChambeau, if you subscribe to the notion that a guy who wins and then come back the next tournament potentially can't win, right? That's sort of, I think, what a lot of us are doing with DeChambeau, or a lot of people are doing. And that's why his ownership is down, especially where he's at, right? He's by, like you were mentioning, Finau, Matsuyama, these guys who played well last week. And now Hideki is getting up in those mid-teen ownership projections, where I'd rather like Hideki down in that, obviously I'd like him in the 10 or less than 10% ownership. I think Stenson would be the one guy that I would choose. But DeChambeau, if you can get a guy who's playing some of his best golf of his entire career, he's only been on tour for 3 years, and now look what he's doing, right? He's in that conversation of one of these up-and-comers that can contend with the big guys. And so I don't mind DeChambeau in that play, but Stenson would be the one I would choose as well.
Dustin asks, for single entry tournaments, should your lineup be more like a cash game lineup or a mass multi-entry GPP? I would veer more towards a cash lineup in that situation. You just have to understand that this week, because of the weird cut rules, you still want to inherit some risk along with upside in those lineups, more so than a field that would have 156 people.
Right, exactly. A single entry, I think you would want, right, the guys that you don't have to worry about ownership, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's sort of the thing, right? So cash game would be the play, but like you were saying, there are strategies, right? And you and I differentiate than some of the guys down below, but that's part of the fun, is what strategy do you want to inherit? What do you want to do? Because when you hit, it makes it that much better. But cash game.
Also, too, just pick whatever. It doesn't matter whether it looks like a GPP lineup or it looks like a cash lineup. If you're playing a single entry and you're only playing like one single entry, just look at all your lineups and be like, I like that one the best, and just use that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're never going to be right, because that's never how it works out. But that's just, that's the only way you can really go about it. Imagine looking at a lineup. Let's say you built like 10 lineups, and you're like, oh, that one's my favorite, but it's a bit too risky. I'm not going to use it. I'll use this safer one, and that's the one that goes off. You'd feel like a moron. So just use whatever.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, in majors and WGCs, I look at my line, I'm like, I can't believe I got Kuchar matched with this. And that's what you see with softer pricing, right? You look at these lineups, you're like, oh, this one's definitely going to cash. And, like Kuchar misses a cut. That's the one thing that, again, we can belabor the point of this guy's going to do this guy's going to do that. At the same time, and that's why golf is, in DFS golf, so much fun, is it's so variant. And that's why we have these shows. That's why we have these questions, is these are the guys and the recommendations that we have for these ownerships. But if you're doing single entry, that's sort of the fun of it too, is that you don't have to worry about all the other stuff. Look at your lineups, take the one that looks the best, and then roll with that one.
I do want to let everyone know I did a DraftKings NFL strategy show with Mike Leone and Drew Dinkmeyer of DailyRoto.com. That's up on the YouTube feed from the weekend. It's also up on my podcast feed, the Pat Mayo Experience, which you can go download and subscribe and rate and review. That'd just be fantastic if you could go do that. Just like giving this episode a like, because as we said, you don't give it a like, your teams are hexed. You're never going to win this week, so just keep that in mind. But I'm doing a giveaway where I'm giving away one Daily Roto NFL package for the season, and it's at the very beginning of the video to go find out how to do that. There's only 1 day left to get into that competition, so I wanted to let everyone know, if you're watching right now and you haven't done that, it's like a $130 value that you might want to go check that out. Or if you use the promo code on Daily Roto, the PME, you get 10% off either their Elite package or their Just NFL package, and that gives you access to all their tools. So I recommend going to check that out. I vouch completely for Mike and Drew. They're one of, if not the best guys in the daily fantasy space as it pertains to the NFL, saying almost every sport. They're just great guys too, and very accessible if you have ever any questions. So 10% off the PME. Check out that show to see if you can get yourself into the draw to win a free package. Reed, you should go do that. I'm probably even if I do draw you out of the hat, I probably won't let you win, but you should go do it anyway.
I was going to say, am I in the running for the winnings? But no, I'm going to second that. I mean, if you've seen these guys on your show, on Pat's show before, they are some of the best. I mean, it's always good content. Not only is it entertaining, they're really smart dudes. And so give it a chance. Even the subscribe to their podcast too. It's really good. Always, statistical based across every sport. So highly recommend.
Smoking Guns 40 asks, thoughts on Rose, Woods, Sink on a bounce back week. All guys, horrendous with the putter a week ago on Poa. Now we're back to Bent. I'm back in on all three of these guys. They're three of my most overweight players of the week.
Yeah, same. I mean, not overweight, but I'm in on all three of these guys. And that's what we talked about, that this putting surface, if it's faster, Tiger obviously has come out, has definitely said it, that, a faster putting surface is his thing. Rose too. I don't put too much stock in the bad putting with Rose. Rose is an elite player. He's going to bounce back. So I like those three.
Yeah, and the thing with Stumanji is the tee to green game is still there. So I'm not too concerned about that. Even when we go back and look at Rose last week, he lost 6.2 strokes putting in 2 rounds. That's incredibly difficult to do. Plus, now you're getting him at these lower odds. Everyone is just pissed that he burned them last week. He was the highest owned guy. They're not going to go back to him. They're going to go with the new hot thing that I just like the spot for Rose, and I think this course sets up for him well. He gained with the driver last week. He gained with his iron, so it's not like he played like crap. He gained strokes tee to green. He's gained strokes tee to green in every event since not this year's Bridgestone, last year's Bridgestone, except for one, and that was at WGC Mexico. So I'm not too concerned about Rose. And as it pertains to Sink, like even if you look at his putting splits this season, he's slightly below average, losing like a 0.2 of a stroke per round on bent grass, gaining 0.2 of a stroke on Bermuda, and he's losing like a ridiculous amount on POA, which was last week. And even when you look at it, he lost 3.2 at the Northern Trust last week, and he had that horrendous first round. But he bounced back well in the second round. Gained off the tee, gained with his approaches, gained around the green. He led the field at the PGA Championship tee to green. I'm not too concerned about him, and people are kind of getting off of it. I know he's old. Maybe the heat will get to him, and he can have one of those really impressive hat tans like he always does. But I'm willing to risk it on Stewart Cink here after everyone's kind of given up on him just 1 week after him being super chalk.
Yeah, those are the best, right? Those are the best guys to, we talk about it, not to bring a crossover in football, is these guys that come off bye weeks or bad weeks, whatever, get injuries, we forget about them. And that's what I love about Stu Cink and these guys, you know, that elite guys like Justin Rose that are coming off quote unquote bad weeks or bad putting. Rose, like you mentioned, he is an elite player. Look what he did at the British, right? He almost missed the cut and then he finishes second. So you know that this guy can flip his putting in a day, not even a day, an evening. So for me, like Rose is a prime play. Cink, I mean, this is not going to happen, but he's playing some of his best golf, and he's not going to be a Ryder Cup pick, but you know that could be some interesting debate where if Finau or some of these guy can't lay, these guys miss cut, and Cink comes top 5. Do you potentially bring him into the conversation as a captain?
Cink could win the next 3 weeks, and there's no way he'd make the Ryder Cup team.
Right, exactly.
That is not happening.
No, it's not happening. But Cink, to me, is one of these guys who's playing absolutely out of his mind at this price. It's a fine play. Yeah, he's not going to make the Ryder Cup, but it's just he's playing really good golf. Play Stewart Cink.
Rahm or Finau for you, straight up? I would take Finau this week.
I would take Rahm.
Okay. The Coke Rack, snorting the Coke Rack, has been playing well recently. This course fits bombers. Good GPP gamble at 6,700. I kind of agree. I'm in on Coke Rack this week.
Yeah, same with me. I think look at his recent finishes here too. So he's got the course history. You know, his putting is atrocious, but it can flip. So I like Coke Rack.
Do you like Benny On this week? This is from Captain or Commander Ben Cisco, depending on what season that we're in here. I love Ben On. I bet him at 140 to 1 with the top 5 each way. I'll probably play him top 10. I have him in like 40% of my DK lineups. He was so bad putting, and he is a bad putter, so that could just sink him once again. But he hit the most greens in regulation of any player last week. He sort of reminds me of Adam Scott. And people don't realize how young Ben On is, but this is where Scott broke through with the Players, and then he ended up winning here when he was younger in his career. He was a better putter than On was at the time, but we've seen stretches where if it's a lot like Stewart Cink this week. If they can just putt around field average, then Ben On's going to finish inside the top 20. Yeah.
I mean, he lost 60 for the last 3 tournaments, 16 strokes total putting.
And hold on. He did do that. He lost over the past 3. He lost 16 strokes putting. In one of those tournaments, he was like break even.
Yeah.
So it's really 2 tournaments he lost to 16 strokes.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's an amazing feat. We talked about it with Justin Rose. Look, that's not going to happen. Even if he loses half of that, right? 3. Like he lost 7 last week. Even if he loses 3, his tee to green and his ball striking is fantastic. So, yeah, I love Ben On this week.
Pat, who is the most expensive player on DraftKings? That is going to miss the cut. I hate these questions because they're stupid, because if I knew that, I wouldn't tell you, and no one knows. So, moving on. I know Leishman blows and his price is expensive, but he finally gained strokes last week on approach and came in 3rd last year. Thoughts? I think he's a nice pivot play. I think that Leishman, we always call Leishman a pivot play, but he always ends up garnering a bit more ownership than we think. I'm not using a lot of people from that range, like I mentioned, but I did use 10% Paul Casey instead of Leishman. That was my move.
Yeah, same here. I think Paul Casey, we've seen him kind of falter a little bit. And so the price tag, getting Paul Casey at 7,900 is really nice. So I'd rather go Casey there.
Would you go Ben On or Griot? I would go Ben On.
Yeah, Ben On.
Okay. What's your guys' best core looking like? I have a lot of Justin Thomas, Justin Rose builds. I have a lot of Justin Thomas, Henrik Stenson builds. Then I have a few lineups that start like Rory Tiger or like Rory Stenson. So that's sort of like the top end that I'm playing with for the majority of my lineups. I do have Patrick Reed and Bryson slightly mixed in, but at a lower exposure as well.
Yeah, I have Rory and Ron that I'm going down, and playing in that 7K or that low 7K range. Billy Horschel is someone too that's popping a lot in my cores and my lineups, and so he's someone that I'm with some of the top 8K guys as well.
Must fade at the top of the board. It's really tough to say because, again, like so many guys are going to make the cut that one great elite week, it would probably be Rom for me. But, like, I'm not playing Dustin. I'm not playing Day. I'm not playing Spieth. And did I play Brooks? I don't think I played Brooks. No, I'm not playing Brooks either. Only because I had to limit it down where I'm playing so few lineups that I can only really take 2 of the top 6 guys. So I ended up going with Thomas and Rory. But, I mean, it's nothing against those guys, but they are technically fades for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the quote easy answer might be Jordan Spieth. But like these guys are up here for a reason. Their win equity, not only their cut equity, is really good. So if I had to fade one out of, like you were saying, I'm only playing Rory from the top and potentially Dustin. I got to see if the lineups, in the salary caps of the lineups that I can fit him in there. But if I had to pick one, it would be Spieth.
Okay, Kevin Na or nah. I'm not playing Kevin Na. We actually have him projected to come in at like 15% ownership this week, which I was really surprised about. But I think his fine play didn't make my core, though.
Yeah, he's been playing really well. But in terms of what I want at this course, Kevin Na, at 15%, you're getting into that Kevin Na where it's a little bit too much. And so if it was sub 10, then yeah, but not for me.
Are you concerned about Patrick Reed since he's in Cantlay's group? And as we know, Patrick Cantlay takes 45 minutes to hit every stroke. I'm not. Reed has 3 consecutive top 10s at this course. He's playing well. He's playing well, but not great. That's always a prime opportunity to seize Patrick Reed because he'll spike at a moment's notice. But even if you can derive top 10 value from his price point, I would go with that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not playing Patrick Reed, but obviously Patrick Reed's one of my favorite golfers. Cantlay is interesting. Cantlay is an interesting play. He's right by Hideki. He's right by these guys. And so I think his ownership might obviously be depressed because of that. But yeah, I'm not worried about that at all.
I actually use like minimal shares. I'll probably match the field on Hideki and Cantlay. I just like the way that they're striking the ball right now, and hopefully you can get the good putting week from one of them. But they're sprinkled into that core that I talked about too. When I looked down at the sheet, I just saw that. Okay, pick one: Chez Reavie or Ben On. I think I used one more share of Chez Reavie than Ben On. I like them both, though.
Yeah, I would go Ben On in that situation.
Okay, so I'm going Chez. You're going On. Walker or Sink? I'll go Sink, 100%.
Yeah, Sink.
All right. Fleetwood or Reed? I'll say Patrick Reed.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to go Fleetwood in that spot.
All right. Any interest in CT Pan? Already did that one. Russell Henley? Yeah, pass for me on Russell Henley.
Yeah, pass as well.
Okay. Any interest in Pat Perez? None from me.
Oh, God. No, I can't do it. I love Pat Perez, but I can't do it. He just has not been playing well at all. I mean, all facets of the game, not that good.
Kevin Tway as a bomber punt play. I never really buy into Kevin Tway all that much, although he has been playing really well. But he's lost strokes, he hasn't gained strokes with his approaches in 3 consecutive tournaments. And I think that we're overstating how much of a bomber's course this is. We've seen winners be bombers, but guys like Matt Kuchar, Patrick Reed, even like Russell Knox, like these types of players do play well here as too. Like bombing can be an advantage, but almost everyone in the field, like Zach Johnson's never missed a cut here. Jason Duffner has never missed a cut here. Like, those guys are certainly not bombers. They don't have great performances. So maybe you can get away with Kevin Tway there, but he's just been putting the lights out so much over his past 4 events that you have to think that flips at some point. If he's not going to get it done with the overall ball striking, I just don't want a piece of him.
Yeah, exactly. And bombing is like, when you talk about bombing, I like it as a sort of, if I'm looking at strokes getting off the tee, I want to focus on potentially, like last week, accuracy is a little bit more predominant than driving distance. That's how I would take it in this case. I am using it in terms of like a tiebreaker, for instance. But I mean, look, Louis Oosthuizen and Ches Reavie, these guys competed here, runner-ups. They were 54-hole leaders, or Louis was. And so these shorter hitters can perform because if they're elite or if they're really good with their long irons, like we've seen Louis in the past, these guys can compete. So it's not necessarily just a bomber's course.
Yeah, like put it this way, I would even throw like Hoffman's one here, Webb is one here, Chris Kirk is one here. None of those guys are bombers. Even Mike Weir has a second place finish here when he lost to VJ that year, when he made his last stand, the last like big moment Mike Weir had, except for when he lost to Brendan Todd at the Byron Nelson. But still, like it's a place where all sorts of skill sets can compete if you can hit your long irons well. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Matthew Ryan asked about Danny Lee. That was like one of the very first questions. We did like 10 minutes on Danny Lee. I'm out, he's in, but you can go figure that out. Any players you're concerned on based on groupings? No. Hatton or Woodland? I'm going 100% Hatton in that situation.
Ooh, I would go Woodland. Okay,
there we go. Maybe that's a bet we can have. Justin asked Tiger or Spieth. I'm going Tiger.
Oh, yeah, Tiger.
Okay. Frank, I'm only doing 4 lineups, and there are 9 players in my pool. Is that enough? Thanks. I don't think so. I think that's actually a good number to have. You're probably all in on 2 guys or maybe 1 guy, or there's 4 guys that you're using at 75% in 3 or 4 of those lineups. Then you're mixing and matching with a few other guys, with 5 guys at like 50%. I think that works out perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you wanted to shrink that core, I don't think, like, if you wanted, you know, a couple less and you wanted to sprinkle down that 7K range, I think that's perfectly fine. And core, I mean by sprinkle less core at the top there with the elite guys. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of, you know, the Pat Mayo approach of Ricky Bobby of, you know, you want to go all in or you're first or you're last. And so if you want to inherit that strategy, totally up to you. I think that's a good play.
Jake asked, which 6 to 7K players will have the highest ownership? I mentioned it looks like Joel Dahmen will come in around 10%. I'm using none of him, so there's a chalk fade for me. It was the same as last week. He came in, what did he come in at last week? Like 12%, I think it was?
Yeah, about 12%, 12,
like,
13.
Like if he's going to be double what everyone else in the 6K range is owned, like he's an easy fade. Maybe it works out, but yeah, I feel like this is a very logical situation just to get off that. Other guys garnering like over 4% ownership. It looks like Tway, Pan, Kokrak, Kirk, Burgoon, and List. Those would be the guys. And Ryan Palmer. Ryan Palmer could breach 10% based on his performance last week. And his approach game has been super sharp, and he has a good course history.
Yeah, I mean, if I think the question too is in the 7K range as well. I mean, it says
6 to 7K players.
Oh, 6 to 7, yeah. I mean, Joel Dahmen is going to be the one guy that gets way too much ownership. I think easy chalk fade for me. But yeah, the guys that you mentioned, they're going to get the most ownership.
Thoughts on Jamie Lovemark? Pass. We saw him, have a 36-hole lead last week. Why? Because he gained 10 strokes putting through 2 rounds. How'd that work out for you, Jamie? Not great. So if he's not putting the lights out, Lovemark's a pretty good putter, and he has been putting really well, but does his best work on POA, his worst work on bent, and a guy can't hit an iron to save his life, so pass.
Yeah, no, he's I think we talked about it last week. He's number 1 in around the green for a reason. Like his approach game is atrocious, so no, thank you. He's
lost at least 3 strokes on approach in 3 of his past 4 starts, and he's lost over 3 strokes off the tee into his past 2 starts. So no thanks for that. He's gained over 5 strokes putting in each of his past 2 starts, though, and the best he could muster was 34th and 24th. Give me a break. Louis, I like more than Woodland, but I'm not using either one of them.
I'm using Woodland. Louis, no, I'm not on Louis.
Louis is just a great mass multi-entry guy because people are so scared that he's going to withdraw, and we just see him spike every now and then. And he's really good off the tee, which helps.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's performed well here. So if you want that narrative, if that's sort of your tiebreaker on playing Louis or not, again, I don't mind it, but I'm not playing him. I'd rather play Woodland in that sense.
Boban says, top guys don't look too inspired to me. You got any love for someone under the radar at a big price like Horschel, Webb, or Snedeker? Like Horschel and Webb aren't big prices. They're like 40 and 45 to 1. Snedeker's a bit deeper, but coming off the injury, who knows? I'd have more faith in Stenson than Snedeker coming off the injuries because he's a much better player. I'll have my cheat sheet released, but I think like bombs that I play just like for fun. See, woo, enlist because, it's a week where they're playing, so I'm betting them. They're 150 and 250 to 1 this week. Kirk at 200, Ben On at 140. Like those are just absolute dart throws. But I think the only guy that I'm really playing with like deeper odds, I played Hatton at 60 and Xander at 90. Other than that, I just have Rose and Hideki on the betting card. It's not going to be a big betting week for me.
Yeah, I mean, if Ryan Moore wasn't dead last in strokes gained total over the last 5 or so years here at this course, he'd be an interesting play because he's playing better of recent. But in terms of bombs, I think the guys that you mentioned, I mean, Rafa is someone that I can't figure out. He's popped in some tournaments, and he should. Like, this is a course that he should decently do well or do decent. But I'm not going to be able to do it. So the guys that you mentioned, yeah.
Smoking Guns 40, thoughts on playing guys that finish well at the Players' Championship? I cover that in my article this week and on Monday's show and on Tuesday's show, so refer to those. Can Adam Scott and the Cheater Putter get a win this week? People seem to think so. One of the best ways to find out who's going to be chalk every week is read like these terrible PGAtour.com columns where they're like, here are my fantasy picks for the week, and they just list like the top 5 guys. And Adam Scott's like all over their site this week, so I'd expect him to be super chalky. He's won here before. He's playing really well. Obviously, the putting has just come around all of a sudden as soon as he did the putter switch. So he is a good play. I'm fading Adam Scott, though.
Yeah, same with me. I can't. I love Adam Scott as a player. But I don't know how he's getting away with this putter. But
well, he's not. The whole thing is he's not actually cheating. People just like to say that he's cheating, so he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, he can do whatever, and it's working, right? It's working. So who are we to judge at what he's doing? And it's working. He's getting paid. I'm not playing him. There's other guys in that 9K range that I like, but yeah, I'm gonna be fading Scott.
Let's see. Richard asks, what ownership do you see on Casey, Mickelson, Horschel having? Casey should be the highest at around 14%. That just might be a stats thing, though. He could come in a bit lower than that. Mickelson at around 10%, Horschel around 13%. So it's all very even to me. Which one seems like the best play? The only one that I'm playing is Paul Casey.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Casey's a nice one. I think Billy Horschel is someone that I'm really looking at 81, so he's a little bit more expensive. He's been playing really well. He plays really well at this time of the year, too. So I do like Billy Ho.
Thanks, guys. Love the mailbag. Love you for watching, Tom. Give the episode a like. Is it crazy to fade all the top-tier guys and anchor 5 guys in the 8Ks and then go with Ben On? I think that's a contrarian build, so you could try it. But I think you're going to need some of these top guys because elite players do tend to perform at the very top of their game at this ball-striking course.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a one-off play if you wanted to potentially do a single entry contrarian play, or maybe, the 3-entry max and you want one contrarian. I think that's a fine play. But you're right. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the show. This is an elite type, the guys who are quote unquote elite, or what we've seen more times than not is the elite guys doing well. So I'm gonna go with getting guys in that upper 9 to 10K range.
Thoughts on a Hideki On duo in a lineup? I see top 5 upside with these two. Well, I have a couple lineups that have those two in them, so I'm in.
Yeah, like I said, I talked about Hideki and wrote him up in my column last week. He's playing well. We've seen him, right? We've seen him putt really well. Irons really bad. We've seen irons really bad, and sort of flip. So I do like Hideki. His ownership scares me a little bit, but I think that's a fine lineup.
Let's see. I like Duffner. That's fantastic, man. He's made the cut every year here, but even the past 3 years, his best performance is 33rd. He's right on that. He's going to need a big performance in order to advance next week to the BMW Championship. And he does have a 9th place finish here 4 years ago, but he's not playing really well at all coming in. And even looking at his putting splits this year, he's been a better putter. He's been piss poor on bent grass. So it's just not for me. But he's going to come in at like 2% owned. If you want to go with the course history and have a quote-unquote safer guy as one of the 80 of the 90 that make the cut, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, who else can you say that about? The 65 Ted Potter, right? The Wizard? No. I mean, out of that price range, he gives you, like you're mentioning, the most confidence, use that definition lightly, in that range. So if you want to use him and you're playing DJ, for instance, and you feel more comfortable playing Duffner than the other guys down here, okay, but I'm not going to do it.
What are your thoughts on Henley and Vegas in tournaments? Double pass for me.
Yeah, no thank you.
Okay. What do you think about fading Finau this week? Should be highly owned. Surely can't gain as much around the green again. That is true. He's probably not going to chip in all the time. He may hit a few more greens in regulation this time around and maybe not lose as much with the putter. But I am fading Finau this week. I kind of agree. I think that Finau is a really good play. But if you have to pick and choose, yes, he's highly owned. It's going to turn into an ownership fade for me, only because there are other guys that I like around the same as Tony Finau. It's nothing against Tony. He could most definitely go T5 here or even win. But when it comes down to it, I'll take a guy who I think has a similar chance of performing well at half the ownership.
Right, exactly. Like you mentioned, Bryson's right there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Bryson, exactly. So same with me. Finau is one of my favorite golfers. Obviously, I touted him quite a bit this season. But in this spot, yeah, you have to play that ownership game a little bit. We've seen him pop, obviously, last week, but Bryson did better than him last week. So I do like Bryson more. And you were saying you get that ownership discount.
Best values from 7,000 to 7,200. Who am I using down here? I'm using Sink, Stanley, Xander, Reeve, and On. And I'm also using List at $6,900. But that's like where the bottom of my teams are all comprised of, like a mix and match of all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the only one I would add to that is Jimmy Walker. 2 of 20 lineups. Not going to really go overboard with Jimmy. But yeah, those guys are I think the plays in that range.
Any news on Snedeker's back spasms? Nope. Can we trust Usti and Stenson not to WD? Nope. Continuing on. All over Fleetwood and Decky this week. Is Fantasy National leading me in the wrong direction? I don't think so. I think that those are the types of players that you want. Really good ball strikers. Fleetwood's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. I'm so much so that even I'm not using him. But I do like Hideki. He's gained over 7 strokes on his approaches the last 2 weeks. He just needs everything to sort of click. And we see when that happens. And this is almost something, too. Like we've seen guys that have won WGCs where so many people make the cut this week and it's an easier course. Like, you talked about Rose, and we've seen it with Rose, but like the reason that Justin Thomas has won a lot of these no-cut events, and Tommy Fleetwood always ends up popping, Hideki's another one who's performed well in these situations, Justin Thomas as well, as they don't need their A game for all 4 rounds. They can get away with a middling round because their ability to go so low is out there too, and you just give them extra chances to go do it. So I think that's why I like those types of players this week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you wanted to build the case for Fleetwood, his long irons potentially aren't as good as the guys around him. Hideki, his long irons are statting out nicely on Fantasy National over the last 24 rounds. But you're right. I mean, these guys, are in this price range and are playing better. Tommy Fleetwood, obviously, we've seen him pop, and Hideki. Hideki is an elite talent. That's why we've talked about it throughout the season. Getting elite talents potentially off of a bad week, like a Justin Rose. That's what I want. Those are the guys that I'm going in on. Rory is that he's not, coming off a bad week, but those are the guys that I'm looking at to really gain leverage on the ownership, especially in a WGC-like tournament. So yeah, absolutely.
Next question comes from Nathan. Since Stars and Scrubs will be the most popular build, is the play to go with a more balanced approach? I don't think it's necessarily the play. I think you can have a combination of 2 of them, but it depends on what you want to do with balance. Like someone mentioned earlier, do you just put in all the $8,000 guys and drop to 1.7K guy? I think that might be a bit too extreme. You leave too much win equity on the table. But if you just wanted to build, like I have a balanced lineup that starts like Tiger, Rose, and who's the other dude in that range that I'm using? Tiger, Rose, and Matsuyama and Cantlay are the top 4. It doesn't leave you a ton, and you can drop it in the $7,000 area, but I think that's a way that you could go. No, it's actually, let's see, it's Tiger, Rose, Stenson, Reed, and then like 2 $7,000 guy in there too. So I think that's the way that you'd want to do it. Use 2 9K guys, and that is that will be contrarian enough that you don't need to go like super like total balance build.
Right, and I think you have to do it, both ways to where like you just did it right there, where you say, okay, who are the guys that initially I would feel good about playing, and then go back and kind of use your statistics and then cross-reference those. And I think that's a really good point of, well, if you're playing these guys inherently, they don't have as much win equity as the guys at the top. Now, in other events where we feel a little bit more comfortable with playing these guys in that high 8, low 9K range, like it's not a bad play at all. But I don't think that I don't think it's going to be necessarily the one. You're going to need the winner, and for me, finding that guy in that 9K or that 9.5K and above is where I'm headed towards. So it's not bad, but for me, I'm not going to be too heavy on the balance approach.
All right, let's go into rapid fire mode here. We're an hour in. I do want to let everyone know I have a fantasy football rankings update, and the winner of that daily roto package I talked about being announced on tomorrow's show. That is Thursday morning. That will be out. And guess what? Guess what comes on Friday, Reid?
The weekend?
No, it's a brand new Cuss Corner with me, Gary, and Tim. It's been a while since we've done a Cuss Corner, so that's coming out. Give a like just for that. And there's some giveaways attached to that as well. And there's going to be a Super 7 giveaway on tomorrow's show, too, for the Spread Pick'em contest for NFL. So I recommend that everyone go check that out. So rapid fire time. You ready for this?
Yep, let's do it.
Thoughts on Rafa Cabrera-Bello after last week's flop? I'm out on Rafa this week.
I'm in.
Okay. Justin Rose, question mark? I'm using a ton of them.
Yes.
Thoughts on the killer Keith Mitchell? I think the moment is too big for him. The field is too strong for him.
Yeah, good with the driver, but yeah, you're right. Moment's too strong.
Should I roster Louis or Hatton? I would roster Hatton.
Yeah, Terrell.
Okay. Thoughts on Reid this week? Terrible losing strokes. I'm using Reid.
I'm out on Reid.
Okay. Ryan Palmer, first-round leader. Looks like a big price to me. That's something I can talk myself into. I haven't made my first-round leader picks. Those will be released tomorrow on my Facebook page. But I could see, like, my early leans once I start digging into the prices. Like, Siwoo and List will be on there because their odds are super high. We know how low they can go. Palmer, Kokrak. Maybe I'll find some Ben An action as it gets in there, although his odds have dropped since the opening week. People are betting him right now. I think that's the sort of range that I'll stick in. Chris Kirk, maybe. Any just random dudes you like just for one round?
I mean, in terms of value, I think those guys are fine. Ryan Palmer, if I look at first round, I think Chris Kirk is the one guy that I would lean towards in terms of first round leader. He was top 10 birdie or better game in the first round over the last 24. So Chris Kirk, in terms of value, would be the one guy that I would lean in on.
David says, Pat, did something happen to your left eye? Looks a little droopy. Yeah, it is stroke.
What?
I didn't really. No. I thanks for not watching Monday's show when I explained this. I got a massive eye infection, so it's just terrible. It's getting better now, though. Looked much better than it did on Monday. If you had to pick one now, who would you say wins the FedEx Cup? I'll go Justin Thomas.
Brooks.
Okay. Blue Blood, Pat, no question. Just want to say thank you for a great golf here. Can't wait for NFL shows. Thanks, brother. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for tuning into these every week and just taking in all the content. That's why we like to do it for free. Not the best advice, but we hope we can get to your questions and make it entertaining as possible for you. Football tomorrow, Cuss Corner, then football all next week, along with golf and MMA. So we're not letting you down on any fronts as we get to the crossover between golf and football season. Thoughts on Grayson Berger? Pass.
Pass.
Okay. Reid needs an enema. He's been playing like he's constipated. Okay, that's not even a fucking question. Piss off, pal.
I thought they were talking about me.
Maybe they are.
Yeah, I have been playing like trash, so I might use that.
Been playing Rory is this week to pull the trigger. I'm pulling the trigger, and I think you are too, right?
Yep. Yeah, he's my favorite play.
Do you think Bryson will be able to keep up the momentum? I talked about Bryson already. I don't know if he can roll the hot putter back on bent again, but I do like where he's at, and I think that he's coming in at just weirdly low ownership. Like, let me ask you this. Why is he a longer price in the betting market than Patrick Cantlay?
I mean, because people hate him.
I really think that's it.
Yeah, they don't like him. So it's silly. Leverage that. I think he's a great play. I'm playing a lot of Bryson. But yeah, leverage that. It's one of those things where it doesn't make any sense.
All right, since it's the last golf chat of the year, can we get at least one of the... I'll reel off a few of these. We can get a Wee Kim on the go, or a C Woo Kim on the go, or a Jason snorting the Kokrak, or we have one big one with Johnny. That's the last time we'll hear from these guys all year. Johnny is not even in the field.
What about your boy Dylan Meyer?
Oh, Hot Fire, Dylon Meyer, or we got some James... Han! Oh, man.
That's fantastic.
Nothing until actually, I'm doing swing season shows, so I mean, those guys will definitely be a part of the swing season. Thoughts on RCB and Cam? We're already both out on RCB. I'm not playing Cam Smith either.
Yeah, I'm not playing Cam.
Torn between Knott and Stanley. Who do you think will be higher owned? Knott will definitely be higher owned. I'm playing Stanley.
Yeah, agree.
Tiger or Adam Scott? Tiger for me.
Tiger.
Chesson Hadley rounding back into form? I don't think so. Pass on Chesson.
No. Pass.
I just wanted to touch back on Jimmy Walker. His girlfriend said on Twitter that he's feeling great. Oh, fucking fantastic. Any love for Ian Poulter this week? No, not for me. He was one of my final cuts.
Yeah, I liked him last week. Not for me, especially at the ownership.
Let's see. Can either of you stomach Noren again? I can't do it. The approach has just been so bad.
God, that price, though, isn't that
I know.
tempting?
It's so tempting. It feels like a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to be his irons. He's just he can't. He's something's up. He's just not playing well with the iron. So, 7,300, tempting, but no for me.
Thoughts on Webb Simpson? I like Webb Simpson. No problem with using him. Like him and Horschel, I both like. It just I got into the situation where I couldn't use everyone, and I had a very specific build I wanted to stick to, so he didn't make my lineups.
Yeah, I like both. I'm playing more Billy than Webb, but I like both, especially if we think the players has a correlation. Webb did. I mean, he laps the field there, so I like both. But Billy Ho would be my preferred guy.
Let's see. Ben on the cock rack. Wasted my fucking time. Let's see. Reid, Rom, or Adam Scott for one and done. I guess this one and done at this point just all depends on where you are. If you're up in the standings and you want to keep where you're at, pick the chalky guy. If you need to make up ground, pick the guy that no one's taking. That would be John Rahm this week.
Yeah, I was going to say Rom.
Let's see. Hadwin. Nope for me.
No, it was a nice spot last week, but no.
Brian says, not feeling great, Pat. I don't fucking care. So quit wasting time in the chat. Bubba, not normally good here. Bounce back. We already declared out on Bubba.
No Bubba.
Let's see. If you had to take a stab at a less than 5% owned player who could pop this weekend, who is it? I guess that guy for me. I'm using 2 shares of Patton Kizzire. That's just my random roll of the dice this week, so that's who it would be for me. You?
I mean, Jimmy Walker's at like 2. Bo Hosser is someone that I'm looking at as well. So those would be the 2 guys at the sub 5 that I'm potentially looking at.
May have already touched on it. Thoughts on Kuchar? Out on Kuchar. You?
Out.
Last one. What do you make of Chez Reeve's back-to-back top 20s? I think it's a great time to jump back on the Chez Reeve train. In fact, I'm playing him in 40% of my lineups. I bet him to come inside the top 20. I like Chez this week.
I can't do it. The review effect, I just can't do it. So no Chez for me, but I do get why. His recent form is really good for Chez, where he was early in the season. So no for me, but I get it.
All right, that shall do it on the Pat Mayo Experience live. Dell Technologies DraftKings chat. Thank you all for tuning in. Please give the episode a like on your way out, or just watch it on demand, or subscribe to the podcast. It'll be out momentarily. Plus, you can check out my betting cheat sheet up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme Tuesday afternoon. You can check out Reid's work on DK Live. And Reid, tell the peoples where they can follow you for all the information.
Yeah, Reid T. Fowler on Twitter. It's links to my blog, videos, YouTube channel, everything of this sort. But yeah, DK Live, DK Playbook, obviously on DraftKings Facebook Live show or Facebook Live channel. We do our daily show at 6 o'clock, The Sweat, where we talk about all things fantasy, golf, football, you name it. So DK Live, DK Playbook, Reid T. Fowler.
All right. And that'll do it for the golf chat season. Like I mentioned, football chats will begin next week. I'm going to be live every Sunday morning at 10 p.m. to 11:30 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. is when I'm doing the live chat. That seems far more helpful than doing it like during the third quarter of the Sunday night game. So check that out. Tomorrow there's going to be football. Cuss Corner on Friday. The BMW, since this goes into Monday, the golf show won't be out until Tuesday afternoon. We'll have week 1 rankings up on Monday with Jake Seeley. And remember, go back and check out that DK strategy show for NFL with Drew and Mike. I'm giving away a daily roto package on there, and you can find out how. Plus, if you use the promo code THEPME, you can get 10% off either their Giant All Sports package or the NFL Chat package. I use it. I highly recommend it. Go check it out. And hey, Raza was on yesterday, Feinberg the day before. Still time, an entire day, since this doesn't start till Friday, to go back and check that. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck at the Dell Technologies Championship. Win some cash. I'll see you next time.